Thanks, Gideon. I'd now like to ask Alex Greenwich to talk to us for a little while. Alex is the independent member for Sydney in the New South Wales Legislative Assembly. He's a keen supporter of our cause. And here he is. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Richard. I'd like to start by acknowledging traditional owners of our land, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respect to their elders past and present. I'd also like to acknowledge my colleague, Maureen Faruqi, who is the new Greens member in the Upper House, who has filled the vacancy that Kate Fairman had left, and also pay tribute to Kate's work in New South Wales Parliament in progressing voluntary euthanasia. I'm sure many of you are aware of the great work that she did. And I'd like to thank Dine with Dignity for organising this forum today and for everybody coming into Parliament for the presentation. And I encourage you to come back to Parliament and continue to meet with MPs, but more on that a bit later. As many of you may know, my background before entering into politics was campaigning, particularly for gay and lesbian law reform. And that's obviously also a bit of a tough road ahead. But I think it's always important to acknowledge successes when you have them. And I would like to acknowledge, although things may seem a bit bleak in regards to this reform, we have actually had some significant successes. For the first time, we had a Premier introduce a bill for voluntary euthanasia in Tasmania. That is extremely significant and cannot be underestimated. That vote, although it went down in Tasmania, was also very close. In New South Wales Parliament, we went from the previous time there had been a vote, there were only, I think, 3 or 4, and that was just the Greens supporting it. Last time there were 13 supporters with 23 opponents and 3 abstentions. Those abstentions were obviously quite significant as well. So we have come a fairly far way. We're still not there yet, and there is still a lot more work to do, but I just want to make sure that you all know that the work you are doing is having an impact. It is getting us there, and we have to make sure that we do not give up on that. Of course, many people don't understand, and fair enough, how there can be such strong community support for this reform. Consistent polling, no matter where you do it, no matter what the voter intention is, no matter what the age group is, shows somewhere between 70 to 85% of people support reform. So the question is, how come that message isn't getting through to here? Why are still a majority of members voting against it? Well, as I'm sure you know, this is a very weird place. And as a new member, and Maureen would share this analysis, it is a very weird place. And members' reality is not the same as your reality. And that's unfortunately something that we have to accept. You know, when things happen in this place, there's a lot of orange, for example, everywhere you go. The question that we need to probably stop asking is not how can this go down, how can people vote against it, but we need to probably start asking the why a bit more. Why is it that people are not supporting this important reform? Is it because they're not sure of the safeguards in it? Is it because of a certain religious affiliation? Is it because they don't want the Parliament's time to be used on what they consider to be Greens issues? Is it because they find this issue too confronting and just want to avoid it and kill it off? Is it because they're a member of a faction of a major political party that doesn't support it? Is it because they're just unsure? And these are the questions that we need to continue to ask. I need to continue to ask my colleagues, and you need to continue to ask your MPs. Go and meet with them and talk to them and get this information, because we need to gather this information. We need to understand why it is that people are opposing this reform. Is it because they don't actually understand that there are strong safeguards in the proposed legislation? Is it because they think there should be more safeguards, in which case we need to know what those are in drafting legislation to be able to get it through? Is it because they have some some misplaced fear that everyone who is a practicing Christian and their electorate is going to vote against them if they support it. We need to work out what that is. And with that information, we can then progress forward with the debate. So I guess, as frustrating as it is when we ask ourselves, how can this go down, we need to start asking the MPs the why question in a lot greater detail, I think, and getting that information from them. You know, the vote went down in the upper house, as I said, 13 to 23. That's 8 people away. You know, that's doable. In our lower house, I think if we had a vote, it would probably go down 70 to 20, somewhere along those lines. Again, that's only about 25 people, 25 to 26 people that we have to win over to get the reform through our lower house. And what process do they want us to take? You know, do we need to start this by a strong focus on, say, advanced care directives and improving legislation around that? You know, do we need to make sure that this is an election issue? Would that be helpful or would that be a hindrance? These are the things that we need to know. And particularly with the election coming up, I know that it comes up on March 28th, 2015, and that seems like a very long time away. For an MP, that is tomorrow. Now is the time to have those discussions ahead of the next election. You know, I often reflect at the Sydney by-election as well. You know, I was asked by Diana Dignity, by Susan, who was actually stuffing envelopes in my office, what my opinion on voluntary euthanasia was, and I said I support it. I didn't really have a good answer to the question why I supported it, though. I'm, you know, a bleeding heart lefty, and so of course it's something that I would support. But it's when I actually spent time researching and thinking about it that I understood why I support it. You know, I looked at stats in the UK, where obviously they don't have voluntary euthanasia, which found something around 15 to 20%, I don't have the exact figure, 15 to 20% of people with a terminal illness attempt suicide. You compare that to places where they actually do have voluntary euthanasia, and it is more likely that someone with a terminal illness will go see a doctor, will go consider all their options, from voluntary euthanasia to understanding new treatments to palliative care, and will avoid the situation that we saw just now that Anya went through. So for me, there's a strong argument of regulation about why I support it. These things, this is happening, and we need to be helping people who are considering it to consider all their options, and if they do decide that they do require assistance with death, then that needs to be done in a caring and compassionate way. You, of course, have my commitment to continue to progress this reform, to work with my colleagues, to work with people like Maureen and members of all the parties to progress it. This is a really important reform, and although we lost the vote this year here and we recently lost the vote in Tasmania, we need to see hope in those results. We need to know that we are actually changing people's minds. We need to make sure that MPs know that this is not an issue that even if they want to avoid, that they can't avoid it, and they need to address it in a caring and compassionate way. And you need to be the ones to deliver that message. But not just you. You need to get your friends and family members. You need to go into your MP's office. You need to let them know that this is not just, this is not just an issue this is not just a Greens issue or an inner city issue or a left-wing issue. This is actually an issue that affects people's lives and their families. And it's an issue which is important to any member, whether they're a member of the Labor Party and the Liberal Party, whatever faction they're in. So I really encourage you to continue your advocacy. You are doing wonderful work, and we are getting there, and we will continue to get there together. And I thank you all for coming into Parliament today. Please come back here. If you are meeting with an MP while you're in New South Wales Parliament and you need to debrief afterwards, always feel free to come and talk to me. In my office, my door is always open to any of you. Thank you very much for coming today, and enjoy the rest of the forum.